Happy Monday. So today we are actually going to be starting chapter 5, Egypt. Why am I the only one doing it, guys? Egypt. Okay. Egypt and Kush. Okay, and our first video is going to be on the Nile River. Now remember, it does matter because the Nile River was the most important factor in the development of ancient Egypt. So get your notes ready and let's dive right in.
All right, guys, so we're going to dive into the physical location of where Egypt is, and especially this Nile River. So we've already identified this when we looked at Mesopotamia and we saw the map that we had there. Now, depending on your teacher, this Red Sea right here is going to be your biggest identifier. And some teachers said it looks like a peace sign. Some teachers said it looked like a slug with the antennas. I know that was mine. All right, but whatever you identified, we know that's one thing that can help us find the shape and then bring ourselves to where we need to be. So when we look at Egypt, we're looking at the area just to the west of the Red Sea. And Egypt is the longest river in the world. It's more than 4,000 miles long. To put that into perspective, the Nile River is longer than the United States is wide. So we're talking a hugely long river. And it flows from the south to the north into the Mediterranean Sea. So it starts down in the southern part of Africa and goes north. This is really, really rare, guys. Oops, sorry for the interruption. I'm back now. It's good. Hopefully no more interruptions. Anyways, this idea of it flowing from the south to the north is really, really rare. There's only one other river in the entire world that does this, and we actually live right on it. It's the St. John's River. So this is a way that we can, when we compare Egypt's geography, we can say that we actually do have some things in common, okay? And so we're going to draw this arrow starting at the bottom, going all the way to the top again here. We're going to draw that several times as we look through our maps. And it has strong rapids called cataracts in several places. We see some here and here. All right, and we have a hand motion for our word cataracts. So when we think cataracts, we're going to think of that rushing water. We're going to say cataracts, okay? We're going to take our claws and we're going to make that waterfall come down. Now here's an idea of what those cataracts would look like. All right, so we're talking about an area where it would be really difficult for boats to pass. It would be very tricky for people to really travel much. And so this created kind of a natural barrier that protected the Egyptians as they had it down further in the south. Because these cataracts were down here protecting Egypt from the regions below it, or to the south of it. At the very north, we see this delta. And a delta is a triangle-shaped area of land with fertile soil. And it's formed when a river, like the Nile, meets the ocean. And we have a hand motion for delta, too. We say delta. We make a big triangle with our hands. My hands are out here. You can't really see them, but we're going to stretch our arms wide out, okay? And these deltas are formed by soil that's deposited as the river rushes down, and it gets all the soil. It goes further and further down in elevation. And then when it gets down to that area, it all gets dumped out, and gravity pulls it down to the bottom before it reaches the sea. So you get this big dumping area of fertile soil. And it's right here at the mouth of this river, okay? So we can see, here's a great satellite image, and we can see as the river progresses, and remember, it travels from the south up to the north, coming this way. All of this green area, this is the area up here and all the way down. That's where our fertile soil is. And remember, this is a satellite image. This is a photograph taken from space. This is the way that the Nile is today. And on either side, you see deserts and all sorts of just very, very difficult land to pass. So this is another way, in addition to those cataracts, that it's preserved. Now, there's something that a lot of people find confusing about this, and it's the idea that ancient Egypt had two regions. Now, because the Nile River flows from the south to the north, the way that we talk about these is a little bit different than we talk about a lot of regions. we have Lower Egypt in the north because it is lower in elevation, okay? Lower Egypt in the north. And we have Upper Egypt because it is higher in elevation in the south, okay? So when we talk about Upper and Lower Egypt, we have a little hand motion or chant that we do, and it might seem a little silly at first, but it's going to help us to remember which one is which. So we're going to practice this in class, but when you get here, I want you to know how to do this. So as silly as it may sound, go ahead, get yourself comfy, and we're going to do this together. We're going to say, and watch my hands, we're going to do some pointing here. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. Do that one more time with me. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile, Delta. Good job, guys. I know that sounds a little funny, and it probably feels a little funny too, but I promise you, if you get used to doing that hand motion, that's going to help you remember which region is which. And we're going to refer to those regions quite a bit throughout our study of Egypt. So it's very important you know the difference between those two. And you know that the difference is that even though Upper Egypt is in the south, it is higher in elevation. And even though Lower Egypt is in the north, it is lower in elevation. Now, there are some similarities that this river had to the Tigris and Euphrates in that it flooded twice a year. But unlike the Tigris and Euphrates, this flooding was very predictable, okay? The Egyptians could tell based on the seasons exactly when the river was going to flood. And it was a very slow, calm flooding. So they could plan for it, move their houses back, and make sure that they had these systems in check to make sure that their fertile soil could be irrigated by that.
Hey guys, this is Mr. Green. I'm making a cameo with Miss Tickle, and I'm just going to talk about the Nile civilization a little bit, because the Nile civilization provided a lot as far as agriculture. So we're going to talk about irrigation. What irrigation is a transport of water from a source to wherever it's going, whether it's the village, the crops, anywhere that you need water. So irrigation is bringing water from the source to wherever you need it. Like your sprinkler system in your yard. That's irrigation, kind of, because your sprinkler system is watering your grass from some kind of water source. That's an irrigation system. Now, we're going to look at a picture in a second. I'll show you that shows you, as you see, what just popped up, a canal coming from the water source, transporting the water to wherever it's going. In this case, most likely it's a farm. So that's what irrigation is. You have canals, you have dams, you have other means of bringing water from one place to another. So because of this, because of the irrigation, the Nile actually provided a very stable food supply to the people, because now you don't have dozens of hundreds or whatever people manually bringing water in and watering the crops or whatever. You have a stable water supply that's continuous, that keeps coming into the farm and watering the land, making the crops grow a little faster, making everything easier to farm, which makes a lot more food because you don't have to work as hard to grow food. Food starts popping up. Now they have a stable food supply. Now everything's good. You have lots of fruits, vegetables, fish, and birds that you have a stable food supply. People are happy. They're not hungry anymore. Population is going to start growing. Anyways, it's a lot of really good stuff happening. Now, something else we're going to talk about is natural barriers. Natural barriers, in this case, here's a picture before I talk any further. This is a picture of a canal that's running from the Nile River through the farmland. You see, yep, as the line Miss Tickle's drawn, you see that's the canal, that's the water passageway, and you see a lot of green in the middle of the desert. That's because it's next to the water, and the water is bringing irrigation to the crops, to the land, and making it easier to grow crops. Now, something else that you might notice on the other side, you see all those lumps of sand. Those are natural barriers. These are barriers that have been created or built so that the water will not overflow in different directions. It will stay in one area to kind of focus it to the farmland so it doesn't go elsewhere. It's planned very well. Anyway, Next one. So hopefully you can still read that. I know I babbled a lot, but hopefully you can still see that. So you have deserts, Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea, and cataracts. These are all examples of natural barriers. Natural barriers protect the people, protect the land. And again, you see the scribbles, it might be in the way. But okay, here, you see all this area right around here. You see all that on the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the Nile River and that green strip. Those are deserts. That's considered a natural barrier. Now, would you want to live there? Probably not. It's not very easy to survive. There's not water. There's no crops. It's dry. Those are deserts. That's a natural barrier. It's protecting the people because it's going to be very difficult for anyone to attack, anyone to come through there and get to the civilization. That's a natural barrier. This sea right up here, the Mediterranean Sea, that is a natural barrier. You can't see what I'm pointing at. It's a dark color, so you can't really see that. But that's a natural barrier. The Red Sea right here, this is a natural barrier. Right over here, the Red Sea, natural barrier. My point is, natural barriers it's land that was not man-made that protects the civilization from either attack, excess water supply that might flood everything, and it just protects the people and allows the crops to grow and allows the people to flourish as a civilization.
All right, so Miss Tickle just told you all about agriculture and how that irrigation and the flooding of the Nile led to them having a surplus of food, which surplus always leads to trade and always leads to money. So if you did not put a dollar sign down there somewhere, it'd be a good idea to make sure that you put a dollar sign near that trade and near where we're talking about having a surplus of food. And because each little city that developed along the Nile began to have so much food and began to trade and become more wealthy, it became a target for everyone, all the other cities. So they began to war between themselves in order to get the upper hand on trade so that they could have more money. And several cities decided that it would be a good idea if they were to band together. If they could band together, then again they could trade more efficiently, they could trade more quickly up and down the Nile River, and they could make more money, and there's always safety in numbers. So your enemies are always watching, and they're looking for when you do something good, and if you can have some people to hang out with you and make an ally out of your neighbor, then you can be a stronger unit together. And so several city-states began to do that. They began to form kingdoms all up and down the Nile River, and they had to come up with ways in order to have a government and to govern these areas. And so a lot of the conflict they had was over who was going to be in charge. And so over time, as these small kingdoms developed, around 2300 BC, two separate kingdoms emerged. And the two kingdoms are the Upper and Lower Egypt. And we talked about Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile Delta. And we talked about that and how the concept is a little bit different because of the elevation of the land and the flow of the Nile River being opposite of what you think. And Ms. Todrick covered all that. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile Delta. And so I know those hand signals do seem a little silly, but they will so help you remember that and get it right, because the objective is to learn your geography and to learn your history so that you can remember this and it can be useful for the future. So whatever it takes, guys, let's get it done. And so Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, around 3100 BC, both of these kingdoms become united under one pharaoh. And remember, the pharaoh is the term for the Egyptian king. So we've got our Egyptian, kind of like walk like an Egyptian king. That's a pharaoh. And Menes is going to be the first one to unite both of those halves of the kingdom and bring them all under one rule. And you can see right here that Menes, he's listed right here, there's his name, he gets to wear the double crown. And the double crown represents Upper and Lower Egypt, both halves. And so he's considered to be the first pharaoh, and that's going to be the title for the Egyptian monarchs. And remember, a monarchy is a form of government where power is passed down through a family. And so he's going to found the first dynasty. Now we've got Family of rulers. So that's going to be our first dynasty. So a dynasty, this is F in sign language. So we do a family of rulers that is our dynasty. So we got a lot of hand signals going on with this. So let's just review those real quick. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, Nile Delta. So that's talking about the geography of the region. And then we had, it's kind of silly, but you know, we do it like you're walking like a pharaoh, like an Egyptian, with an Egyptian king. And so that's a pharaoh. And since we're talking, that's a monarchy. A monarchy is where we have power passed through one family. And when one family rules for a long period of time, we call that a dynasty. So we get one family of rulers for a long period of time, and that's our dynasty. So it's important for us because this is another empire that is being created, and we've talked about empires being created in Mesopotamia, and now we're talking about a huge kingdom being united under one ruler in Egypt. And so it's important for us because this lays the foundation of governments and trade agreements and different things that happen within a civilization going forward. So as we start comparing our two civilizations, you should start to hear similarities of things that make sense to you from before and carry it over into the new one, and we should be able to start to make comparisons because we want to reach that level 4 on our scale so that we can compare these two civilizations. So as we're working through that, I hope you continue to read your notes, to look at the videos that we post, to look at other videos, and check out your textbook. There's some really cool things in your textbook this time, so go check that out. The link to do that is in Schoology, and you can find that over. All of us have posted that on there so you can find it. If you need it, ask one of us and we'll repost it so you can find it. See you soon.
All right, guys, time for your higher order thinking question. Okay, so list and explain at least 3 ways in which the geography of Egypt helped or protected the people who lived there. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little hint. I would think back to what Miss Tickle said on her portion of the video. Okay, 3 ways. And remember, guys, if you are not answering this higher order thinking question and you're not answering it in depth, you will lose points. And we would hate to see you lose points for something as simple as a question. All right, so think about that. Go back if you need to, and we'll see you in class. Bye.
Go.
All right, guys, if you've made it this far in the video, well, then you are awesome because we are going to have extra credit. For those of you who don't make it all the way to the end, stinks to stink. All right.
So, Miss Tickle, why are mummies so good at keeping secrets?
Because they keep everything under wraps.
Ha ha!
Da-da-da!
See you next time, guys. Bye.